Hello, and welcome to today's episode of IELTS Explained, where we take a calm and thoughtful look at how the IELTS exam really works. If you've ever wondered how your listening answers are turned into a band score, or what really happens after you submit that answer sheet, then this episode is for you. In the next few minutes, we'll walk through the entire scoring system behind the IELTS Listening Test, how every mark is calculated, what each band truly represents, and why even one extra correct answer can lift your result to the next level. So, find a quiet spot, put on your headphones, and let's begin uncovering the process behind one of the most precisely designed language tests in the world. The IELTS Listening Test. When most people think about the IELTS Listening Test, they imagine a quiet room, a pair of headphones, and a ticking clock counting down the minutes. Yet, very few truly understand what happens behind the scenes, how their answers are marked, what makes a score band higher or lower, and why even a single word can make the difference between Band 6.5 and Band 8. In this episode, we're going to unpack exactly how the IELTS listening test is scored, calmly, clearly, and in detail, so that you can not only prepare better, but also understand how every mark truly counts. To begin, it's important to remember that the IELTS listening test is designed to assess one very specific skill: your ability to listen and understand spoken English in a variety of real-life contexts. Whether you take the academic or general training version, the listening test is exactly the same for both. It lasts about 30 minutes, with an extra 10 minutes for transferring answers to your answer sheet if you take the paper-based test. Those details may sound simple, but they set the foundation for how the scoring works, because every second and every section of that half hour contributes equally to your final band score. The test itself consists of 4 sections, each one slightly more challenging than the last. The first section usually involves a casual, everyday conversation. Perhaps someone booking a hotel room, arranging travel, or asking about local services. The second section moves into a more informative monologue, often describing an event, a map, or a process. By the third section, the audio becomes more academic, often involving a discussion between 2 or 3 speakers about a project or research topic. And finally, the fourth section is typically a lecture or presentation delivered in an academic style, requiring close attention to details, numbers, and relationships between ideas. Every single question in these sections is worth exactly 1 mark. There are no partial marks, no half points, and no deductions for incorrect answers. That's something many test takers misunderstand. There's no penalty for guessing, which means if you're not sure about an answer, you should always write something. When all 40 questions are completed, your total number of correct answers is converted into a band score that ranges from Band 1 to Band 9. This conversion is done through a fixed scale used globally, ensuring that every IELTS listening test is scored fairly and consistently, whether you sit for the test in London, New York, or Dhaka. Now, let's explore what that conversion actually looks like. While the specific raw score to band score scale can vary slightly from test to test, in general, you'll need around 30 correct answers out of 40 to achieve Band 7. For Band 8, you'll need around 35 correct answers, and to reach Band 9, a perfect score, you'll need to answer 39 or 40 questions correctly. This scaling is based on years of data analysis conducted by Cambridge Assessment English, the organization that develops and maintains the IELTS exam. They ensure that the level of difficulty remains consistent across test versions, so your score accurately reflects your listening ability, not just your luck on a particular day. Behind the scenes, each IELTS listening paper goes through a rigorous process of calibration. This means that before it's ever used in a real exam, it's tested on a group of students from different language backgrounds to see how they perform. Their results help determine what raw scores correspond to each band level. For example, if too many students get very high marks on a particular test version, it may indicate that the listening material was slightly easier. And so the raw-to-band conversion might be adjusted to maintain fairness. In this way, the IELTS system ensures that a Band 7 today means the same thing it did 5 years ago, and the same thing it will mean 5 years from now. The scoring process itself is remarkably straightforward, especially when compared to other parts of the IELTS exam. Since the listening section is objective, meaning each question has only one correct answer, there's no human judgment involved. The answer sheets are scanned and marked automatically, especially for computer-based tests, where the system records your choices directly. For paper-based versions, trained clerical markers enter and verify the answers. There's always a second-level verification process to prevent human error, ensuring that every mark is accurate before the results are finalized. One thing candidates often worry about is spelling. In the IELTS listening test, spelling matters. If your answer is spelled incorrectly, it will be marked wrong, even if the rest of your response is perfect. That's why it's crucial to familiarize yourself with British spellings, since IELTS follows British English conventions. Words like color, center, and favor must be spelled with the British endings, not the American ones. However, the examiners are not overly strict about handwriting, as long as your answer is legible and clear. Another small but important detail concerns grammar. While most listening answers are single words or short phrases, grammar still plays a role. For instance, if the question requires a plural noun, but you write the singular form, it will be considered incorrect. Likewise, if the instructions specify no more than 2 words and a number, and you write 3 words, the answer will be disqualified, even if it's factually correct. These small details might seem trivial, but in a tightly marked test like IELTS, they can make a noticeable difference to your overall score. It's also worth mentioning that the listening test is not designed to trick you. Many students believe the recordings are intentionally confusing or designed to mislead them, but that's not the case. The test aims to measure your ability to follow natural speech patterns, detect changes in tone, and identify key information in context. However, the reason some find it difficult is because speakers in the recordings often use paraphrasing, meaning they express the same idea using different words. So, while your question paper might say, "What is the total cost of the ticket?" the recording might say, "That'll be £30 altogether." If you're not trained to recognize synonyms and paraphrased language, it's easy to miss the answer entirely. When the marking process is complete, your listening score contributes directly to your overall IELTS band. For most candidates, especially those applying for academic purposes or migration, this section is vital because it's often one of the easier modules to score highly in. Unlike the writing or speaking sections, which depend partly on human assessment, listening is purely mechanical. You either got it right or you didn't. That's why understanding how it's scored can help you strategize. If you know that one incorrect answer can shift your band from 7.5 to 7, you'll pay much closer attention during practice tests to accuracy and time management. The IELTS listening scoring process is also connected to something called test reliability. This concept refers to how consistent and fair the test results are, regardless of external factors. The IELTS Consortium, which includes Cambridge Assessment English, the British Council, and IDP, invests heavily in ensuring that each version of the listening test measures the same level of ability. They do this through a combination of data analysis, examiner training, and quality control procedures. Every test item, every single question, is reviewed by multiple experts for linguistic fairness, cultural neutrality, and clarity. Let's pause for a moment and consider why that matters. When you receive your IELTS score, it doesn't just represent how well you did on that particular day. It's a statistically validated measurement of your English listening ability compared to thousands of other test takers worldwide. That's why universities, employers, and governments trust IELTS results so deeply. They know the score wasn't given arbitrarily. It was earned through a process built on global consistency and precision. And that's where we'll pause for now. We've just explored how the IELTS listening test is structured, how marks are awarded, and why accuracy and spelling matter more than most people realize. In the next part, we'll take a closer look at what happens behind the scenes, how your raw score is converted into a band, the myths and misconceptions about the scoring system, and the small details that can make a big difference in your final result. So stay tuned for part 2 of this episode, where we'll continue unwrapping the fascinating process behind how the IELTS listening test is scored. Until then, take a deep breath, stay confident, and remember, every sound you hear brings you one step closer to your goal.